and we go from there. So again, happy Friday, everybody. Hello and welcome to today's program as the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston hosts conversation with Antoine Schellinger of Koch Project Solutions. I am Sandia Bayou, Chief Development Officer here at the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston. It's our hope that all of you are doing well, staying safe, and staying healthy. For our viewers, please use the Q&A tab at the bottom of the Zoom screen, again, Q&A, and I will keep an eye on those questions as they come in and incorporate in our discussion today. Now, more than ever, it is so important that we stay informed about what is happening, not only in our city, but what is happening all around the world. And our organization, the World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, brings foreign affairs experts right into your home. And Antoine is our guest today, and he's one of those. Antoine, welcome.
Oh, well, thank you, Sandia. Thank you for having me.
It is absolutely my pleasure and honor to host you. First thing first, how are you, your family, your team at Koch Project Solutions? How is everybody currently doing?
We're doing well. Keeping myself, family, and our team of Koch Project Solutions healthy and engaged despite all the pandemic challenges.
Absolutely, and I see a big, actually a writing on the wall, literally behind you. Safety is first priority. So safety and health definitely is the first priority for all of us. Let me highlight some of your career highlights, and we incorporate it as we go. So we know that you are the Senior Vice President of Business Development at Koch Project Solutions, which is a part of Koch Engineered Solutions. I think most people are familiar with the Koch name and the parent company, Koch Industries. Can you tell us a little bit about your company, Koch Project Solutions, what it does and where it sits in the Koch family of companies?
Yeah, as the name implies, Koch Project Solutions provides capital project solutions to generally to the capital-intensive and industrial sectors such as power generation, chemicals manufacturing, biofuels, refining, large industrial sectors. And Koch Project Solutions is part of Koch Engineered Solutions, which prides itself in delivering a lot of highly engineered goods and services to a broad swath of market. It's a family of 12 companies currently, and the range of endeavors are very broad. Just a couple of quick examples is a lot of the protein isolated milks like A2 milks and lactose milks. Koch Engineered Solutions provides the separation technology that allows those customized products to come to market. We have a whole technology line that's going to help the grid adapt to evolving changes and become smarter, a smarter grid and smart sensing technologies. So it's a very broad range of products and services in the KES suite.
Certainly, from milk to energy to distribution. Wow, that is very, very broad. Antoine, might you share with us what is your specific role overseeing business development? A little bit more about you within this organization.
Sure. Capital project investors have a lot of options and a lot of pathways available to them to help realize their project. We are one of those options. We believe we're a very viable option, and I communicate frequently with people who are considering making large investments and talk to the merits of our approach to helping people realize investments, and occasionally people agree with us and partner up with us, and we help them deliver projects. They have a lot of capital projects. Investors have a lot of things on their mind. The actual engineering, procurement, and construction of the facility is but really a small subset of the issues that they're trying to face and tackle, from who are their suppliers, who are their customers, what permitting's needed, what government policies, tax policy changes, the willingness of the market to fund projects that look like their project can be very influential, and they're looking at this over at least a 10-year time horizon, if not a 20-year time horizon. So fraught with risk.
Sure. In our call in preparation for a discussion today, you made a comment that really stayed with me. You said Koch Project Solution builds your home, then hands you the keys. Great analogy. Could you elaborate?
Yeah, so it is a good way to wrap your head around it, because we are a full service project execution approach that you can't equate to building a new home. So you know, a builder. So if you're considering building a new home, you say, I want to get an architect and a builder together, which Koch Project Solutions encompasses both. And you say, I want to build a home of so many square feet on this plot of land, and I want it to be English Tudor style. You know, beyond that, I got a lot of things to do, but that's what I basically want. And our customers come to us with a very, very similar request. One of the projects we're doing now, a gentleman owned several existing businesses in California and had some byproducts and so feedstock streams as a result of those businesses. And our charter was to find him and develop him the optimum economic asset that takes advantage of those streams and integrates into his business.
Uh-huh.
And so even then, there's still a huge degree of owner involvement. It's not like they stump it over the fence like you wouldn't with your own home. You have comments on the plans, and then there's just plain preference issues. You know, the home equivalent. What color do you want your kitchen cabinets to be? It's not a cost issue. It's just, what do you want? And then of course, you verify everything like city inspectors do, that everything's up to code and compliance.
Wonderful. It's really, I think mentally, I just built the home. Your background is very interesting. Your experience along the way is also quite diverse. You studied and earned your degree in chemical engineering. Later, you earned MBA here in Houston, and then years later you decided to go to law school also here in Houston. And during this time you had a number of different roles of various companies, primarily in the chemicals and energy industries. You're clearly very ambitious. Koch Project Solutions was formed almost 2 years ago, which is when you began work with the company. By any chance, were you part of the launch of the Koch Project Solutions?
Yes. The president and I of Koch Project Solutions founded the company, but before it was founded, we had a very extensive dialogue about what the vision of the company would be, and who would we serve, what value would we create for the marketplace. And at one level, we're following that vision exactly, but come down a little bit more detail, and of course we launched a business in January of 2020, and we had to adapt to a changing marketplace. Absolutely.
The year of 2020. We will certainly come back to that later in our discussion too. Want to a little bit stay on your personal journey. I would like to ask you to share with us and our viewers your personal career path, as we also know that some of our students are participating today, some of the interns. So it's always very interesting for them also to learn how the path took you and where it took you, and how eventually you found your way here to the Koch Project Solutions.
Well, I'll try not to bore you too long, but I will run through it, because
yes, please.
But so first and foremost, I am a firm and avid believer that is the world works on people doing business with people, not necessarily companies doing business with companies. And in my career, every professional move I've made has been a result of a personal relationship, 100% for 27 years or so far. So back a long time ago, I graduated with my chemistry degree in Massachusetts from Worcester Polytech Institute in December '94. And we were in the throes of the savings and loans crisis and a deep recession. And of the 32 people that were in my graduating chemical engineering class, only one of them graduated with a job coming out of college.
That's a perspective.
So a company called Fluor Daniel, or currently called Fluor, used to be called Fluor Daniel, gave me a call a few weeks after I graduated and said, if you will come to Houston, Texas, you can work as a chemical engineer. And so to Houston I went.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had no idea what the company did, to be honest, or what I would do, but I knew I was going to have a professional job using my degree, and that was enough.
Absolutely.
Circling into a little bit of unsolicited career advice is, spend the first 10 years of your career becoming an expert at something, a referent expert at something. When it matters, who's the go-to person that really understands some subject matter, some material. In the first 10 years of your career, establish yourself as a referent expert in one or more areas. In other words, become a useful professional. So as you go through your career, the more advanced senior professionals are going to create opportunities, they're going to start ventures, they're going to step out, and whether these ventures are part of a large company or standalone entities, they're looking for team members that are going to help them with these ventures. And the industry may seem very large to you as a young professional, but as you advance in your career, you'll find it's actually much, much smaller than you think. And pretty much most everybody knows everybody. So people are selected to take on these new initiatives, to take leadership roles in these new initiatives through references. It's just human nature. When you're making a big bet on something, you want to get the very best people you can have. And that's where a lot of opportunity lies, is people having faith in you. So, I got my first bit of notoriety as a capable but not an excellent process engineer, but I communicate well, and that's not as common as you would hope. And so I got enrolled in the high potential program at Fluor. And so the reason I talked about new ventures, some of the senior leaders broke out of Fluor and started a new venture, and I had established myself as a young up and comer a little bit, that they pulled me into the new venture and moved me up a couple grades of responsibility, very fairly early in my career, and where I became a construction management. And then as that venture wasn't exactly what it was promised, some of those same people broke off and started yet another venture and pulled me into that venture and moved me up a couple notches of responsibility. And at that point, I became the general manager of a piece of a startup engineering company called Palmetto Management Engineering. And at that time, I was beginning to realize that more education could be beneficial. And I talked to the founder of that company, and we were able to work out a deal where they were willing to support me. And so on nights and weekends off, I went to University of Houston into their executive MBA program, which was a fantastic program. MBA was excellent for education. But more importantly, out of MBA is my classmate, now spouse, was discovered through that program as well.
Wonderful. So
a lot of times when you're in a startup venture, versatility is really, really prized. And now as a chemie MBA and some project execution background, I was able to fill in. So in a startup, you start with, say, 5 people. then you go to 6, 7, but you need the functionality of like 20 people. And so the more people can fill multiple roles until you can afford or justify hiring a full-time person to do that job, that versatility is highly prized in new ventures, and that's something that people saw in me. And the other thing is you got to keep that humility, because you can't be too good to do anything at any point in your career either. But you can't be the manager that says, well, we need to get someone to do that. If there's no one to do it, you need to roll up your sleeves and do it, whether you're overqualified for it or not. That venture was acquired by a larger company in town, a company called Wood Group. It's a large company, and they wanted to do a new venture. So now this time I did yet another startup underneath the umbrella of a larger company, but yet another startup opportunity. And I guess I was getting to be known as the person that helped start up new ventures by this point. And then 2008 hit, the world sort of changed, global crisis, and the U.S. market seized considerably. And through another very personal relationship, I took a fairly risky step with a Nigerian midstream startup, and to become the propane man in Nigeria, essentially doing the kind of business that Kinder Morgan and Enterprise does in Houston, just doing it in Nigeria. And the venture was fairly successful, and we did a lot of product. But there were a lot of risks that were new to me. Risk of, bullets and, harm, violence risk that was real and manifest in that situation. And with my new wife and new family, we just decided that was the benefits were not outweighing the risk. And eventually came back from that, but an interesting part of that experience is I was on the senior enough management that I was on the fundraising trail, because we were a small energy entity, but we were not self-sufficient cash wise, so we had to go beg and borrow for investors. And I gained quite a bit of education during that time as my first exposure to appealing to investors to invest in risky energy assets, and what drove them, what animated them, what they wanted to hear about, what they didn't want to hear about. And that served me well as I moved forward. Then coming back to the States, again, another friend introduced me to a venture capital group that was investing in what we now call ESG, or the energy transition, or the bio and circular economy. And they needed a person who they had some really excellent doctorate researcher, deep subject expertise kind of people, and they had this nice investment committee, but they really didn't have a translator in between there. And again, as with leveraging some communication skills, they put me as the sort of link between the deep technical research and the communication of those findings to the investment board and investment committee of that. And we were very, very successful with that venture. We grew it from a valuation of about 300 million to about 800 million. But our sponsoring entity changed their priorities and decided not to continue with the portfolio, and kind of sold it off in pieces, which is fine. That's certainly their prerogative. But while I was there, I realized that I was now in the business of essentially buying patent rights, patent assignment rights, to be perfectly technical. And there was a law school a couple blocks away called the South Texas College of Law. And I went to the managing director of the fund and said, is it okay if I go to law school on nights and weekends while I'm doing this, and can you help me with that a little bit? And they said, yes and yes, and we think you're maybe not of sound mind, but if you want to do it, then feel free to. And that is when I received my law degree. And again, with younger children, toddlers at the house at that time, 2 toddlers. Another shout out to my wife Janet, who was a saint and supported the family while I did this crazy thing. So then I found I introduced to the current president of KPS now, but he was working with a small project management company that was looking for some assistance with business development. And it seemed like the right fit. And I think it's the right fit because we're still working together over 10 years later as Koch Project Solutions. And from there, I actually started up a company. A company that was there for about a year, but we started getting the calls for this venture, and this was the superior alternative to owning an own company, because the degree of services you can offer with the backing of a Koch in terms of financial and risk tolerance is stunningly different than what you can do without it.
Sure.
And so KPS was born.
Wow. I find it really helpful to kind of travel with you through that journey and understanding the continued education and the value. When you re-engaged it, you kind of took the next step. So many of us take the model of doing everything in the front end, but you had the kind of expertise, skill set, and certain understanding to go along with those next steps. So I think it was very kind of you to share that journey, and there's definitely value in that way of approaching and continuing your career path. So, and it sounds to me that we might be hearing about a few more other startups the way this is going. So it's we'll reach out to you later and see if you have some more ideas and startups, and I'm confident there will be more in your future too.
This is arguably my sixth startup venture.
So here, of course, you know that World Affairs Council of Greater Houston, we are focused on world events. That's part of our call line. We are the World Affairs Council, and the various intersections of how what happens globally affects us locally here in Houston, and of course, vice versa. Koch Project Solutions is a global company. You are based in Houston, as we know. So how, in your view, the global events and geopolitics affect what you do and how you do it and how you do your job?
Yeah, so we're in the capital projects business, and people don't spend money on capital projects because they want to spend money. They invest money in the capital projects, and investments are made in response to what the marketplace is telling you, what you feel, what gaps need to be addressed and to solve societal problems. And the types of investments that the KPS manage often exceed $500 million. Some of them are much larger than that. So I like to say these are big answers to big problems, and they are absolutely tied to the geopolitical landscape in every way imaginable. And so the other thing is there, the time horizon. Again, if you decide you want to build one of these assets, the time between saying, I think this is a good idea and I really want to pursue it, to that asset actually starting to function or operate is typically like 5 years. So think of what you're going to do and place down a huge bet, if you will, on what the world's going to look like 5 years from now, and then you're thinking about how it's going to function for the 10 years subsequent to that 5 years. So the amount of analysis is sometimes can be paralyzing, because you never know what factor what geopolitical event, whatever may disrupt the market that you're attempting to serve. The primary risk that KPS takes on for the client is that you say, hey, this thing's going to cost $500 million and take 3 years to build. But one of the services that KPS offers those people is we ensure or we guarantee that it's going to cost $500 million and take 3 years to build, which is not a small guarantee to make. And then sometimes we even make the guarantee that when you turn it on, it will work.
Yeah, that's important.
Well, and that's not as big a deal if you're building the 30th time that this particular kind of facility is being built, but very often we're building things that this is the first time
Sure.
that this kind of facility is being built. So those guarantees are not taken lightly either.
Absolutely.
But you know, the thing about our investors is they have a lot of things that are keeping them up at night that are much bigger and broader problems than just the design, build, and construction cycle of the asset. And so, you know, as a BD professional, I consider it a very incumbent on me is to be extremely conversant in the very broad set of issues that are animating our investors and potential clients, and to be able to offer meaningful opinions on those matters.
Absolutely. And how would you say that your work how does your work impact the world or various countries where you do business, kind of the reverse of thinking the other direction?
Yeah, and so these are, again, big answers to big problems, and where you put a major facility always has a tremendous impact on the economy and society that it belongs in. And plus, these are, you know, manufacturing jobs, you know, the core jobs, which have that multiplier. I think Fed Reserve says like 5 to 1. So for every manufacturing job, there's 5 jobs of hotel workers and restaurant service and everything else in society that accompanies servicing those manufacturing jobs. And we have, you know, in the emergence, I can give two quick examples without, you know, early in my career. I had the pleasure of being involved in a project that built a first diaper plant in Southeast, a country in Southeast Asia. And like 2 years after it was constructed, you know, diapers were more, you know, became part of that community, whereas before they were not. So some real meaningful impact. One of the things that's happening today, in fact, just very relevant today, is the emergence of the biomass-based economy. And I had the pleasure of visiting an area that is rich in biomass and timber, sustainably managed timber. But the paper industry moved out of these towns 20 years ago. And no industry ever came back to replace those towns. So we're looking at some efforts that could be dramatic impacts on some rural areas that haven't seen a manufacturing type position in 20 years, and it could be everything to that community.
Yeah. True. I want to take us back to 2020, as you were saying, in your world, definitely you project, you deliver. We all projected in 2019, completely different 2020, and result different 2021, and what that might look like in the future. If I would like to talk a little bit about that, and what perhaps the main theme or dominant discussion, again, was, you know, the businesses, industries, and again, COVID-19 and pandemic. This past year, I'm sorry, starting in March, of course, had been extremely challenging, as I said, for all of us. And I really wonder if you could share with us your experience, both personally and, of course, the perspective of your work and business. How were you and your family impacted, and how did you manage this now, last 15, 16 months?
Yeah, so I'll ask on the family part first. As the proud parents of twin sixth graders, we have been faced with the same challenges that all school age parents have been faced with. Is how do you become virtual? How do you manage your family's safety? How do you even obtain groceries? And best I can say is that we muddled through that like every other family in the area. I don't know if there's any good answers, but we do our best.
Sure.
But from back to the company point of view, so KPS said, we are fully operational, we are market facing, we are going into the market, we have a plan, we have kind of some eyes towards customers that we expect that we would be appealing to, and the kinds of things that people were looking at investing in at that time. And long story short, virtually none of that occurred, because as February and then March hit, everything changed and upended overnight. So, this is one of the great things about being part of Koch, and a very attractive part of the Koch culture is Charles Koch has poured his life and career into the culture of Koch, and it comes in the form of what we call market-based management. And this is where it really shines. So not to be an advertisement for MBM, although it's a great discipline that anybody can follow and readily available. I'll read 2 of the 8 principles very, very quickly.
Sure.
And you don't mind me reading. Knowledge, so knowledge, acquire the best knowledge from any and all sources that will enable you to improve your performance. Share your knowledge proactively. Don't hold it to yourself. And provide and solicit challenge consistently and respectfully. And I'll read the other one real quick. Principled entrepreneurship, which is to practice a philosophy of mutual benefit, because nothing works without mutual benefit. Create superior value for your company by doing so for our customers and society, and help make Koch the preferred partner of customers, employees, suppliers, communities, and other important constituencies. And so if I boil those down, the reason I picked those 2 in a nutshell is the world's always changing, and you always have to seek knowledge, and you always have to challenge your assumptions and bias, and then of course you adapt to solve problems. And I think everybody nods their head and agrees to that, but to do so very consciously. But when the world is faced with a major upheaval, that cycle, that action is compressed into a very short amount of time. And then more than ever did we fall back and said, what is our culture? What is our guiding? And we fell back to NBM, which is, I can't overstate how important that is to how Koch functions on a day-to-day basis. But we said, hey, let's go back to our first principles, and let's adapt. Mm-hmm. So, what you can't do is particularly it's easy to say with pre-COVID is you can't say, all right, I'm just going to sit on my hands, wait for this to pass, and then the market will come back to what it was, the normal market before COVID. Well, that's never going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's only going to adapt to the new landscape moving forward, and that sort of rear view thinking can be a troubling spot for many entities who say, well, we've always done this. Well, yeah. That's not the reality. You live on a shifting landscape, and you have to adapt to that shifting landscape. So, of course, we did the basics to keep everyone safe. But the biggest thing is, what were the big problem? What are the new big problems that needed big investment to solve? And that's where we set our sights.
Yeah. Well, we'll continue that, but I wanted to share you have a greetings actually from Carlos Chaidez. He says, just wanted to congratulate Antoine. We worked together during this time at Palmetto Engineering and Wood Group. Nice to see you again. So greetings from one of our viewers. Kind of sticking with the, again, to the Koch and continuing of the conversation. What was the experience of Koch Project Solutions 1 year ago and going into such an abrupt disruption and global pandemic? So again, continued dialogue, but I want to make sure that I recognize the greetings before the time runs out.
Mr. Chaidez. Okay, so beyond the, first and foremost was the health and safety of our families, our teammates, our loved ones, and Koch did a tremendous job of arming the multitude of businesses that operate in Koch with good, factual, non-political information, and we developed protocols and couldn't have asked for more support in that regards. But then it came back to, okay, so how are we going to adapt to our business? And we, like everybody in the financial markets, paralyzed at first, because what is this? There's so many questions to be answered, and uncertainty is always the greatest enemy of investment. How long is this? How deadly is it? Is it, nobody knew.
A lot of unanswered questions.
So, in a period like that, it's kind of hard to go to your investment committee and say, I want to make a $500 million bet on this investment theme, so nobody did anything. But then we started to quantify and gain knowledge. One of the things that happened very readily and measurable was essentially global energy consumption dropped about 30%. That equated to about removing the need for probably the last 20 years of energy investment was no longer needed, just overnight. And that put a lot of assets underwater, particularly smaller refineries. But then conversely, things started spiking. The need for, plexiglass, for hand sanitizer, for containerized products. All of a sudden, everybody was buying everything mail order. So there started to be a sense of, well, we're starting to know some things, and we're starting to see gaps that need to be filled. And in fact, one of the earlier projects that we got on was there was a fleet of corn ethanol plants in the United States, and they're mostly great fuel grade ethanol to put in the tank of your car, be blended into the gasoline pool. Well, you have to do a major conversion if you want to use that same ethanol for what's called the USP grade or a hand sanitizer grade alcohol. And ultimately, probably about 8 of those projects were done, but we did one of those projects as one of our sort of first COVID adaptation project. And so really about the second and third quarter of 2020, people started getting their heads around what's happening here. And then, there's, for the last 10 plus years, there's been a really major issue of, we really want to address decarbonization or reducing greenhouse gas emissions. But in the world of energy growth, it's like, well, do I build one more unit of new energy because the population growth and GDP demands it, and I know exactly how that investment looks, and I know exactly what the economics of that are, or do I want to invest in this new, never been built before, should work, but might not work, biofuels facility? And it was always tough for those biofuels investments to compete. But now, all of a sudden, while ESG was, or the lower carbon future was very important to these corporations' boards, now all of a sudden their existing assets were not needed, underwater, losing money, and they still had the capital allocated that was going to be for those projects. So it became a bit of a perfect storm, and a lot of boards redirected their fund flows into projects that fall under the ESG category. And in fact, there's over 15 refineries in the United States alone who have discontinued operations processing crude oil and are being retrofitted to process what's called fats, oils, and greases, like soybean oil, to make renewable diesel.
Yeah. A little bit on COVID and ESG you already touched upon. And one other thing you touched, we spoke about slightly during our preparation call, or one of the previous calls, was about, you spoke about COVID accelerating the ESG trend by changing capital allocation. And you referred to this as a silver lining, and to which the user said that adaptability comes with upheaval. Might you further explain as you talk to us about ESG for those in the audience who may not know, be not as familiar what is exactly ESG, and it is becoming a type of new standard. And in relation to this past year, what can you tell us about how COVID affected your ESG oriented projects?
Yeah, absolutely. And ESG is become a common term. It stands for environmental, social, and corporate governance. I'm going to focus just kind of on the environmental side because that's what affects me mostly. But a quick example of sort of the S&G, or the social and corporate governance, is there's recently been some debt issued to companies, and the debt may be tied to some diversity goals at executive ranks of the company, for example. Not something that really affects that's prominent in our business, but so I'm focused on the environmental. Mm-hmm. So, and really, when you talk about environmental, it translates to, for us, the decarbonization of industrial processes. So that's generally done kind of two big categories. So you could say, hey, I have a process that been running and it exhausts a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, or a relatively large amount by our current thinking. And is there a way that I can grab those molecules, or bolt on some new technology to this facility to effectively capture those molecules and store them somewhere, or put them somewhere? And so then the question is well, where do you put it? Mm-hmm. And then that opens up a legal question. If you say the most prominent answer today is, say, go find an acceptable geologic formation, drill a well, not to extract things, but to put things in, and ensure that they're going to stay in that formation. Well, that is an answer, and it's a very good and becoming to be a very well studied answer, especially in the last few years. But chances are the existing facility had no notion of what geology happened to be underneath that facility when it was built 40 years ago or 50 years ago. And so those answers become impractical. So, let's just say I figure out the technical hurdles of capturing my CO2. Do I got to transport it a mile to an acceptable injection point, 50 miles, 100 miles?
Mhm.
And what are the costs in problems with doing that? And by the way, when you do, I kind of referenced it before, but when you do push carbon, CO2 into the ground, there's some legal questions about, am I trespassing on somebody else's property rights? And so there's a sort of a third regime that's gaining a renewed legal intention of a typical property rights of surface owners and mineral rights owners. There's now the rights of pore space owners, which is not the minerals that are underneath the ground, but the interstitial space
Wow.
between those minerals, which is where you're storing the CO2. Who owns those rights? Who has those rights? What objections can they raise or not raise? Or those are some very real and imminent legal questions that will be in our courts very prominently over the next, say, 10 years. Another way to decarbonize thing is to use biogenic carbon, and fancy word, but all biogenic carbon means is carbon that was cycled out of the atmosphere, say like the last 100 years. In other words, a plant, a tree. So if you say, okay, if I take a tree or tree thinnings, again, acceptable, sustainable forms of biomass, and I apply some new whiz-bang technology and I turn it into diesel fuel, and I put that diesel fuel and it looks just like the diesel fuel that comes out of a crude oil refinery. And I burn it in my car, and it exhausts the same amount of CO2 that my car does under normal operations. But I haven't net emitted any more carbon because I harvested carbon, recent carbon, biogenic carbon, and I emitted carbon, and I'm going to go harvest some, I'm going to grow some more plants that are affixing carbon, and that's the carbon neutrality argument. So then again, you know, how do you go about doing that? Has it ever been done before? Has it ever been done in industrial scale? Who's going to build that? Who's going to guarantee that it works? Who's going to figure out if there's enough biomass to feed the place 24/7 for 20 years straight? And that's the exact kinds of questions that we've been working through with a lot of the projects we're going to talk about here. And I'm trying to keep an eye on the time. And then, so now you might think, so, well, what if I made a product from biogenic carbon and I sequestered CO2 emissions? Would I, in a sense, be decarbonizing the atmosphere? And my suggestion to you is read carefully, because people are doing just exactly that.
And you mentioned about some more specific projects, and I want to also keeping an eye on the time too. Time really has to tell you goes by so fast. So turning to some of the most recent developments for Koch Project Solutions have made with announcements in some big projects. A few that we have been reading about are, and if I don't pronounce them, please correct me as I go. Viridis Chemical, Sidra Minerals Processing, Gevo, Imetis, did I say right? Imetis?
Imetis, yes.
Imetis, Gen 3, and very big one. That word I can't say. Grown Fuels.
Yeah, it's the Swedish for green.
So what can you tell us about these projects, and are they significant? And are they significant as a reflection of the types of relationships that Koch Project Solutions, seeks to build? Yeah,
again, you heard it before, but this a concept for us is being a preferred partner and earning your way into that spot by creating, superior value, and for it to be sustainable in the sense of it's a good deal for everybody, a true win-win structure. Because without that, the relationship will ultimately deteriorate if it's not healthy and productive for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
So, each one of these investments is a unique investment designed to solve a very unique problem. But I can say that without a doubt that all 6 of those all have a strong ESG compliance to them. And the one that's probably least obvious is maybe one of the most impactful is Sidra's technology in and mining of sulfided sulfided metals or copper, gold, and some of the rare earth metals that are all needed for batteries. So the mining industry desperately needs some innovation, because as we electrify everything, including our vehicle fleet, we're changing the demand profile of a lot of base metals that are incorporated into these battery technologies. And so Sidra is a fantastic technology that makes significant reductions on the amount of water that's consumed in extracting those ores, the amount of energy that's consumed, the amount of footprint or space that's consumed, and to make previously uneconomic waste, in other words, more efficiency, higher recovery rates of the minerals that are taken out of the ground. So all those things have tremendous ESG impact. You know, Gen 3 is used motor oil recycling or upcycling. So chemical recycling of the used motor oil that comes out of your car to make advanced lubricants. And then like Viridis, Gevo, Ametis, and Gron, while they're all very, very different, but they all are examples of strong efforts to bring biomass-based fuels and chemicals into the marketplace, and into the marketplace at meaningful industrial quantities. So these are all leading investments in the decarbonization of the industrial supply chain, and we're very pleased that they've chosen us to be their preferred partner, and of course we're going to serve them well. And just I can't talk too much about dollars, but rest assured that those 6 investments alone represent many billions of dollars of anticipated investment to solve societal problems.
Well, thank you for that. And congratulations on that, and thank you for definitely sharing and being again in the forefront and in produce or creating new initiatives and sticking with them, if I can say that too. And any thoughts, comments on perhaps trends as the industry goes forward in kind of the post-COVID-19 world that we are entering right now?
Yeah, so again, the degree of clarity around our future is getting better as we enter the second year of the pandemic. So barring major setbacks, we've sort of got our hands around the more intermittent effects of COVID. And the people and the demands of basic materials and industries hasn't gone away, and there's still some argument about just exactly how fast it returns to pre-COVID. I don't believe there's any credible argument that it's not. And so a lot of these investments, which we set out to serve in January of 2020, and that were all suddenly pushed to the side, now people are in those boardrooms are starting to revisit the more traditional infrastructure projects that were sort of planned basically around GDP growth and sort of fundamental population growth demands. But I am 100% certain that every one of those projects is going to be re-engineered and re-envisioned with a much stronger eye towards the ESG aspect, because it has become the number one in this issue for the industry.
Yeah, and I'm gonna slowly start wrapping up our dialogue. And as I mentioned earlier, and we're very passionate about education, about our student participation, young professional, and continued education through us as an organization, give those opportunities for access to knowledge, access to speakers, thought leaders globally. And given your rich education background, again, thank you for sharing the story, the diversity of your career path. What advice, guidance could you offer to both, as I said, our students and young professionals today who are thinking about their futures, trying to make those sometimes decisions about careers that are tougher, then what career advice might additionally you share that you've already done fantastic job of today highlighting?
Oh, I got a list of sort of 8 things, so I'll just kind of run through them. One I did before, which is become a referent expert in something, in one or more aspects of your field. You need to be grounded in some technical knowledge that makes your field go. Force yourself to network inside your industry. You have to get out there and introduce yourself to people and shake hands and meet new folks. Focus on writing, communicating clearly and succinctly. Learn how to condense information. Every executive at every company on the planet is suffering from a massive amount of information overload. They value and prize information that is clear, succinct, and condensed. As a general rule, and it is very rare for reports to exceed 1 page. If you can't condense it to 1 page, you need to better refine your knowledge of what you're trying to communicate. Just as a self-reflection, how are people thinking about you? What are they saying about you when you're not in the room? Are they complimenting your character, your integrity, your honesty, your work ethic? It's very important because most decisions about your career are not going to be made with you in the room.
True.
Never, ever be too good to roll your sleeves up and do the grunt work. You just keep that humility with you. And we talk about this at Koch a lot, is examine yourself, follow your natural talents. And you can always find passion in what you're doing if you find the role that enhances what you're already naturally good at. But you're not going to get there unless you really think about what are my natural talents? What am I just naturally good at doing without having to work at it so hard? And then, never ever stop learning, listening. You don't know it all. You're never going to know it all for sure. And just a lesson, probably as much from my father, is you don't learn very much when you're the one talking. Listen, shut your mouth and listen. And then, once in management, your company's culture is absolutely your greatest asset. We work for a legendary investor who knows and understands this implicitly and has poured his life into helping us with the framework called market-based management. And then in true market-based management style, shared it freely with the world. So please feel free to read any and all of Charles Koch's books, where we read them religiously as well here.
Thank you. This is really so useful, appreciated, and certainly some thoughts I can take home with me. But I'm sorry, I'm home already. But I'll take it with me and think about over the weekend also. Definitely valuable lessons that apply, I think, for us in any field, anything that we do. Antoine, before we call it a weekend, any closing thoughts?
No, really, just again, thank you for entertaining me for this interview and for the great work that the World Affairs Council does, and the World Affairs Council's Houston in particular does. It's a tremendous asset to our community, and thank you.
Wonderful. That's what a great way to close it. I don't think I can anything else add except to say thank you again for your leadership, for your ideas, your participation, and it's my hope and trust that we will stay engaged with you, your group, and continue the global partnership and thought leadership that you have to better evaluate us, ourselves, our students, and the generations here in Houston. And thank you for our viewers today. We appreciate that you chose to spend time with us in your lunch hour, so that is greatly appreciated. I wish everybody a wonderful weekend. I know we have some rains coming, so everybody be safe. Again, stay healthy. And we look forward to connecting with you as soon as next week, Wednesday, when we host the president of the World Economic Forum, Borge Brender. So Wednesday lunchtime, looking forward to seeing you there. Wonderful afternoon, everybody. Again, with that, I say bye-bye and wish everybody good afternoon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.